Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. Wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us.
Welcome back, Wild Health family. This is Dr. Jeff Graham, and I'm here today with a really exciting guest. I know so many of you are into the longevity and health span hacks that we like to advocate for at Wild Health, and we have just the guy to tell us about something that you may not be familiar with. It's been around for a while, but I have found that not as many people are familiar with it as you would think. But we've got Dr. Chris Burres with us today. How you doing, Chris?
Wonderful, Dr. Jeff. And by the way, let me clear, like, I am wearing a lab coat. I do work in a lab. I am not a doctor. So I just want to, like, I do not want to misrepresent
Okay.
myself.
All
You're
right.
a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but I think this is really exciting to be talking about something that's pretty cutting edge. When I have to be honest, it hurts a little when I hear people saying, "Oh, not that many people know about it," because that's one of my key roles is to
Yeah,
make more people know
sure.
about it. And so, like, here I am making more people know about it.
Beautiful. That's what we're here to do, man. Spread the word. That's what this podcast is all about. Get the information out. Chris, I'm going to do a quick intro. I'm going to ask you to fill in any blanks that I missed. So, Chris is the founder and chief scientist at MyVitalC, where he has manufactured a Nobel Prize-winning molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result in history, a full 90% extension of life. And I'm really interested to dive into that with you. Published author, host of the Uncovering the Secrets to Longevity Health Summit, a podcast host, patent holder, and maybe the thing that I'm most interested in discussing once we get through the science is a master of comedy improv. I'm looking forward to hearing about that, and hopefully we're going to make a lot of people laugh during this one. He is at the intersection where science meets laughter, and his life's mission is to help people live longer, healthier, happier, pain-free lives with science. Did that say it all, or anything you'd like to add there?
No, that's really good. I'm excited, and it's interesting. I debate including that in the intro because does that put any pressure? Do I now have to actually be humorous at some point?
Well,
And
I mean, maybe we put that's the bookend at the front here. I mean, we'll spend a lot of time talking about the science today. How did
yeah,
you get into is improv comedy just a habit, a hobby, something you picked up along the way, or in the kitchen?
so if you think about somebody who was at some point in their life a professional improv artist, your first thought is probably that, oh, this guy, was a theater geek, right? Like when he was in
Yeah,
high
of
school and
course.
junior high, maybe even into college, that he did theater of some sort. I did none of that. I did nothing. And it's not like I have a lot of respect for it. It just didn't really interest me that much. I did always kind of like accents. So I've always kind of played around with accents. And I think that the best way to describe how I was successful in comedy improv with no kind of background in it was one time my mom came to a show and she, at the end of the show, I was like, "Hey, what'd you think? Like, what was it like?" And she goes, "It just felt like we were sitting around the dinner table. Because we used to do improv around the dinner. Like we would take a word and then flip the word upside down. And then, what did that remind us of? And it was just a lot of fun, a lot of word play and yeah, a lot of improvisation. I can share if anyone in your audience has ever thought about, oh, maybe it'd be fun to, I don't know, take an acting class, music class, whatever. I can highly recommend improv because I mean, there is a point. The first class that I took, the teacher was like, "Hey, how many people woke up today, rolled over to their nightstand, and grabbed their script for the day and read through it before they started going through their day?" Like the reality is, it's all improv. Everything you do is improv,
That's well
and
said.
some of the
Yeah.
rules of improv really focus on being present, and like in a context like this, like this is a show. It is our job actually to inform and entertain people. And
Yeah.
one of the rules of improv is my specific job is to make Dr. Jeff look brilliant, right? Now, you've probably been on interviews. I've been on interviews where they don't necessarily follow that rule, but
Yeah.
it makes a better experience when I don't have to worry about being brilliant because you're focused on helping me to be brilliant, and vice versa. It really changes the dynamic. Anytime you're thinking about how you speak, which is important in comedy improv, I think it's really good for how you communicate in general.
That's fantastic. And I would imagine, let's just segue this right into the topic of our discussion today. I would imagine that from a brain neurochemistry standpoint, actually practicing some kind of improv with an endpoint in line, like making someone laugh and coming up with stuff on the spot, I'd imagine that's probably pretty good for neuroplasticity, continuing to.
Absolutely. I can share this. People think, and I do understand that, fear above death is public speaking for so many people,
It
like
is.
it's rated
Yeah.
above death. And so, yes, just me being on stage probably terrifies, or, the thought of somebody else being on stage terrifies them. Because they feel so much responsibility, because they're going to have to use so much brain power. The beauty of comedy improv, and this would be very different than like acting, is it's a total mental release. So I could have the toughest week at the office, in the lab, whatever, stress, and then I could go to a performance, and counter to what everyone thinks is like they think you're coming up with things and doing stuff. You actually have to just go blank. There's a phrase, if you're in your head, you're dead, right?
Mm,
I am listening to the other person, and I am thinking about how I'm going to build the scene with the other person. But if they make one tweak, right? So they're talking about a green frog, and now the green frog gets run over. Any ideas that I had in my head about the green frog, having a romantic, interlude with whatever is gone, right? So now
God.
I have to let
Yeah.
go of all of that and start from. So yeah, you're thinking about those things, but all the answers are in the other person. So it was an absolute mental break when I was
That's
actually on stage.
That's fascinating. And I kind of, maybe that's akin to what we do when we meditate and work on
Mm.
mindfulness stuff, that mental break of just learning to drop thoughts, learning to turn the head off a little bit. And yeah, I imagine it makes you completely present. You have to be really present in that moment to be able to make
100%. If you're in your head, you're dead. If you're not present, you're also dead. Like that's
love
that
it.
the what you're going to say next comes from the other person and what they say. So like if you're not listening and you're not tuned in and you're not connected, that dead flat frog is having some sort of romantic interlude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes no sense.
I love it. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, let's start out talking a little bit about your book, the
Yeah.
Live Longer and Better. Is that right? It's put
Yeah.
out in 2023. Yes.
Yes.
The subtitle, Your Journey to Living Longer and Better has never been more achievable than today. And I know as a scientist who's focused in this field that you are, we know there's a lot of things that are really effective as lifestyle hacks. We were just visiting about that before this, kind of what we like to talk about at Wild Health, lifestyle modifications around, looking at your ideal diet, what's going to be the best exercise for you, really optimizing your sleep, thinking about ways to reduce your 30 to 40-year risk of chronic disease. Tell me, not only, about some of the knowledge that maybe you talked about in your book around that stuff, but then introduce this molecule to us as well that you've been.
Yeah, so I think if 8 years ago you had said, Chris, you're gonna have written a book called Live Longer and Better. You will have done a longevity summit interviewing 55 experts in longevity, including Ben Greenfield, Dave Asprey, Stephen Gundry, Sergey Young, Tom O'Brien. I would have just said no. I don't know how that I don't see any path from where I'm at to where I'm going.
Yeah.
Um, I in terms of so I have a podcast like you, maybe yours wired similarly. The first reason I do the podcast is very selfishly, I get to cement information into my
Yeah.
brain, right? Like
You get
when
to
you
learn.
teach, right,
Yeah.
is when you actually really know the information. So that's a big part of why I put together the book Live Longer and Better. But I also have kind of the more altruistic piece, which is as I'm accumulating information and different information, I like to present that so other people can learn from that. So they don't have to spend, I spend a lot of time when I'm preparing for an interview. I spent a lot of time preparing for the book and putting the content in the book. And so let me share that so that others don't have to spend that much time. So that's kind of the background. I wouldn't have thought I'd be here. Like, here is the reason that I am here, right? So I'm holding up a model of a molecule. If you're listening, just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms, right? So we have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. This molecule was discovered in 1985 at Rice University here in Houston. That's where we're based. And the three scientists who discovered the molecule actually won the Nobel Prize for the discovery.
Mm.
They won the Nobel Prize because when people were like, hey, what's the molecule good for? Well, it actually performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. It's just a fantastic molecule. It makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And this is often where people pause and go, wait, I thought this was a health podcast. You just said batteries.
Yeah.
I've literally
Tire.
never woken up,
Yeah.
looked at my car and thought, what component, cathode or diode should I be taking on a daily basis? And interestingly, the story gets a little worse first. One of the shapes on the exterior, and by the way, we call this molecule ESS60. One of the shapes on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule is the same shape as benzene. Now, benzene is ubiquitous for in modern society. We actually don't have modern society without the benzene ring. And just to prove it to you, kind of glance around you, including our glasses. It's made of plastic. Benzene is the foundation of all plastics. It's also the foundation of a lot of medicines, including aspirin. Maybe one of the more famous medicines, and also detergents. So we don't have modern society without the benzene ring. But when you get the benzene ring all by itself, it's known to be toxic and known to be a carcinogen. So that shape on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule caused some scientists to believe that it would be toxic, a lot of scientists actually, and they ended up putting it in a toxicity study. In that study, they gave one group of Wistar rats, in this case, water. So that's the control group. One group was given olive oil, a semi-control group, and the last was given olive oil with ESS60 in it. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to with the ESS60 molecule lived 90% longer than the control group. So that's the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, and it's peer-reviewed published research. And you can imagine that particular study kind of changed my trajectory from being a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist to getting into the health space, to writing the book Live Longer and Better, to having the podcast Live Beyond the Norms, and ultimately kind of come on a show like yours and share this content.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful, man. So tell us what is what's the theory? What's the explanation behind that effect? I mean, here we think we're dealing with something that, yeah, I think of benzene, the first thing I think is carcinogen.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, tell us how ESS60 is different.
Yeah. So, I mean, just fundamentally, they're very different. Benzene, toxic, carcinogenic. The ESS60 molecule, not toxic or carcinogenic. A lot of the skills that we have as chemists to work on benzene do work on the ESS60 molecule. And I'll just kind of take a little rabbit holes are fun every now and then, right? The molecule's big enough for any atom on the periodic chart to fit inside of it. So one of the original theories was, hey, maybe we can put some radioactive atoms inside of it, and then the wet chemistry still works, so we could make a protein partner that would attach to cancer cells. And now you could potentially be delivering a radioactive payload directly to cancer cells. Like, this is the kind of fantastic stuff that can be done with this molecule. Again, part of the reason that the three scientists won the Nobel Prize. That study was published in 2012. By 2013, we start getting wacky phone calls from wacky, crazy people called biohackers. And I can say that because I'm affectionately
Because you are one. Yes.
I am one. Yes.
Yeah.
And when they were asking how much they should consume, my business partner, again, conservative, ultra conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists, what we heard is, hey, Chris, how much of that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world so that they can put it into ink, batteries, tires, and photocells, how
Yeah.
much of that stuff should I be consuming? we actually thought 0. We actually put not for human consumption on our labeling in mid-2013. So from 1991, when we start manufacturing it, all the way to mid-2013, we don't have to put not for human consumption on the labeling because the crazy, wacky biohackers hadn't really kind of honed in on us. Mid-2013, we put it on. Now, just to be clear, survey of the literature, molecule is safe. We're just ultra-conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists. And we started getting phone calls 2 to 3 times a week from crazy, wacky biohackers going, hey, my knee pain is gone. And we're like, wait, you mean the knee pain of your rat, right? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, the knee pain of my rat. Hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and likes to do HIIT training on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays,
Yeah.
should my rat increase the
My
dose
rat-
on Tuesday? Right. So my business partner are getting together every quarter. Hey, like there's people taking this. They're reporting amazing benefits. It's safe in the literature. Should we get into the supplement market? And our reaction every quarter was just like, we don't want to be in that market, right? It's, you're in this space. Like, how challenged is the supplement market? It's got a lot of challenges. It's kind of the antithesis of the market that we were in, right? We would sell our black powder to research institutions around the world. They would give it to a research associate or a grad student who had the equipment, who had the knowledge to test it and make sure that we shipped them what we promised them, right? That's not how the supplement industry works. In fact, when we were having this kind of quarterly debate, I found a peer-reviewed published research paper that said 50% of the supplements that this research group had purchased did not have in them what they said they had in them, right? And so we just kept saying, no, we don't want to be in this industry. No, it's not for us.
Yeah.
Finally, in the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following, that's how it always happens these days, right? Starts talking about all the benefits he's getting, taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from 2 to 3 calls a week to 10 calls a day. And then my business partner, like at that quarterly meeting, we're like, okay, this is a different thing.
Yeah.
And one of our considerations was, hey, we saw that research paper where 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they have in them, what they say they have in them. That's going to happen in this industry. And we're uniquely positioned with the lab, with the experience. We've been working with the molecule for 33 years. We're uniquely positioned to be able to deliver a high quality, safe product to the consumers. And then we asked ourselves 2 questions. The first is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it?
Sure.
I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team takes it. By the way, that's not a requirement. You don't have to take it in order to be on our team. And then the next is the FDA, FTC. You got to cross the T's, dot the I's. And so in the beginning of 2018, we were off and running. Now, to get to your question, sorry, that was long. I think it's interesting. What is the mechanism of action? In 2018, we hadn't really visited like what's going on here. We're just hearing these people with amazing testimonials and saying no. And then finally, I'm like, okay, well, I got to dig in. So first thing is a 90% extension of life a big deal? It turns out it is. Not a surprise to you. You've been in the space longer than me.
Yeah.
I certainly had never seen in GNC some sort of product saying extend your life by 30 at all, like extend your life at all, right? So I was pretty certain it was. Digging into the research, the next best way to extend your life is calorie restriction. I mean, it's extremely well researched and
well documented. Yeah.
Right? It's in all sorts of animal models. It's extremely likely that if you reduce your calorie consumption by 30%, you can extend your life by 30%. I call that the starve yourself 1/3 to death diet. Not many people are saying that. If you have a clipboard, no one's really said they need a new marketing spin, but that's a 30% extension of life. And in our case, it was a 90% extension of life. So, okay, that's interesting. And then my next thing is, okay, what's the method of action? And we noticed really quickly, kind of from the 2 to 3 calls per week, our most consistent testimonial is people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. And so our first thing is, well, if we're improving sleep, we all know that sleep is good for your mental, physical, and emotional well-being, right? I know it's part of your program. You gotta understand it. You got to figure out how to improve it. Like that is
maybe the thing we ignore the most too as a society.
Well, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hand waving. Like, yeah, sleep is absolutely important, great for mental, physical, emotional well-being, and you should absolutely get your 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. Well, I mean, unless friends are in town, and then,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't worry about it. And
Or unless I've got this project and I'm going to sit in front of this light box until 9 p.m. and be activated. And yeah.
So there is, I think, a lot of hand waving. There's a book by Dr. Matthew Walker.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic book, right?
Yeah.
I call it the Freddy Krueger of sleep books. Now, you remember Freddy Krueger from
Oh, of
Nightmare on Elm
course.
Street,
Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
used to scare you out of your dreams. This book will scare you into your dreams. I love
dreams. That's well
Right.
said. Yeah.
That
Getting some improv here. Wait,
Right.
actually, it was not improv. You've probably had that. You've dropped that one before, I bet.
Yes, and I don't know if you've had a chance to see Dr. Matthew Walker talk.
Yeah.
He's an unbelievable speaker. Like,
Yeah.
there's no utterances, there's no ums, there's no ahs. Like, it's absolutely brilliant. And in his intro, he's like, if you were to fall asleep while reading my book, I would take that as a compliment.
It's a compliment. I
Right?
love
Because the whole point of the book is you need to get your sleep. And
And
we can
even the
dive
way
into
he
it.
talks with that accent, it almost kind of puts you to sleep. It's like,
Exactly.
oh,
No,
yeah.
he's the
Measured
he's
and
the perfect sleep expert, right?
he is. He really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So better energy in the morning, throughout the day, better cognition, and then better sleep is what you mean.
And so that's where we landed first, all right? If we're
Yeah.
just improving sleep, that can explain, like, all of the knee pain, hair growth, whatever, all these
Sure.
things that we were
Yeah.
getting from people who again, crazy, wacky biohackers calling us 2 to 3 times a week. And then I said, well, okay, so we got this 90% extension of life. Let's look at what does the medical community think about longevity. And they tend to think that aging, and this is not everyone, but a lot of them think that aging is an oxidation and an inflammation process, right? We
Yeah.
even have the word inflammaging.
Yep. Inflammaging.
That's how important it is. Well, we can check both of those boxes, and I'll walk you through that. So, in terms of antioxidant, there's an ad hoc study out on the web showing us to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. There's peer-reviewed published research showing us to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So we can absolutely check that box. When it comes to inflammation, and you'll know this, a lot of people may not know this, the FDA has equated chronic inflammation with the diseases of chronic inflammation, which are the diseases of aging. So if I were to say, hey, our product reduces chronic inflammation, the FDA is hearing our product cures cancer, cardiovascular disease, arthritis, Alzheimer's, which we do not claim. There is so much research that would need to be done very expensive research in order to make that kind of claim. So you have to be very careful about anti-inflammatories. What the FDA does allow us to say is that we address inflammation, acute inflammation due to exercise, right? So we've all had a tough workout, maybe just walked longer than normal and woken up and felt that inflammation in our bodies. We absolutely address that. And I like to kind of wrap up that kind of inflammation piece with, well, there's two things now, something pretty recently. One, we fit perfectly in an anti-inflammatory diet, right? That diet is associated with the blue zone people. They tend to have reduced incidences of heart attacks, reduced incidences of stroke, and they tend to live longer. So we fit in that diet. The last little piece that I can add, which is pretty exciting, actually, you'll probably have some cool feedback on this. I met a Dr. Lane Young at a biohacking conference, a Dave Asprey's biohacking conference in Dallas. Had a long conversation with him. He met up with us in Vegas at the A4M Longevity Fest conference.
Yeah.
We had a booth at both of those. And he shared with me, and I actually have a video of this because it was just so profound for me. He was like, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, if you're pre-surgery, post-surgery, if you have cancer, if you're cardiovascular disease, pre-diabetes, post-diabetes, diabetes, your product reduces HSCRP, so high sensitivity C-reactive protein, dramatically in 4 to 6 weeks. In fact, I had one client that was sitting at 9, and I subsequently learned that 9 really means to a lot of people that you have cancer until they prove otherwise, right? So that's the inflammation that's in your body. So HSCRP of 9, put them on our product, and then 4 to 6 weeks later, it was at 0.9. So that fits in with the inflammatory. So we can talk about potentially reducing HSCRP. We can't talk about reducing chronic inflammation. That this is just the dance that the FDA requires. By the way, I think it's the right decision, right? Because if you just start, everywhere out there was marketing that their product reduced inflammation, then like everything would say it reduces inflammation. And then you're like, oh, well, it fixes all those chronic diseases.
Yeah.
So that's it. Now I've covered a lot. We have one last theory, the newest theory.
Yeah.
But if you had any questions, I
Well,
certainly.
so far we've got a massive oxidative stress, is what we're seeing, 170, 120 to in the hundreds times more potent than regular vitamin C. We've got an anti-inflammatory effect, and by the way, when you look at the longevity literature for the listeners, and I think we tell most of our patients this here, those have been two of the resounding themes. Caloric restriction, obviously, like you said, that's been one of the most well studied modalities. But looking at those two things, high antioxidant, high omega-3, kind of the types of things those guys do to reduce inflammation. Those are two of the themes that we see to living healthier, longer lives, consistent in the literature. So you've hit those two. What else you got for us?
Yeah, so now I think it really gets interesting. And let me throw out a disclaimer. The FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or
Yeah,
prevent any disease. I'm going to
sure.
share some anecdotes. I like to say, just assume these will not happen for you. If you want to dig into the research, understand it, there will be a link actually specifically for your audience at the end if they're interested in trying it. Best just assume that this won't happen for you. So we were getting, in that time period where we're getting 2 to 3 calls a week, we literally had head to toe testimonials. My hair's growing back faster. It's growing in places it hasn't grown before. It's growing in original color. Like, that's pretty exciting. On the toe, we actually have a guy that we've worked with as an influencer. His big toe was bit when he was 5 years old by a crab, and it split his toenail. He actually, at one point in his life, was a Navy SEAL with a split toenail,
Mm.
right? At 65, after he started taking our product, his toenail healed. At an age when, our old school of thought was like, that can't happen. And old school of thought was like, it's not supposed to happen. Now I think we're all changing our mindset, thankfully. But so at 65, so how do you explain head to toe testimonials, right? Inflammation, you can probably get there. You can't get there without really talking about chronic inflammation. What we have come up with is what's called the BOSS theory. So this is buffering oxidative stress system.
Mm.
So what we know from peer-reviewed published research is that this ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria.
Yeah,
We
I was
also
going to
know.
ask you about that. I was reading some about that there's this theory about mitochondrial enhancement as well. So the new mitochondria, is it mitochondrial biogenesis, or is it just that it upregulates mitochondrial function?
So we think it's a buffer. So let
Okay.
me walk through this, and hopefully it'll
Yeah.
address. And
Makes sense.
I have a fun, we'll call it comedic analogy to kind of wrap this up. Maybe that's hopefully no one's disappointed in the lack of comedy in it, but we'll call it that. So we know it gets into the mitochondria from peer-reviewed published research. We know even back in the 90s when it was discovered that this molecule can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of the ESS60 soccer ball-shaped cage, right? So we believe that, well, kind of quick refresher, I know your audience knows this, mitochondria, the powerhouse of every cell. There's
Sure.
between
Yeah.
50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for blood cells, which have 0,
Yeah.
and brain and neurons, which have 2 million. That's how much energy our nervous system
Agree. Next
uses
up.
compared to the rest of our
Yeah.
systems. Just like every energy source, your car going down the road has exhaust, right? Your power plant has a smokestack. There's a negative byproduct. In the case of mitochondria, it's these negatively charged reactive oxygen species. Now, internal to mitochondria, you have the antioxidants glutathione and melatonin to manage those reactive oxygen species. By the way, melatonin, we all know, is the sleep hormone. Like, that's our most consistent testimonial. So that's just an interesting sidebar. So when mitochondria get overwhelmed, that's when there's not enough glutathione and melatonin to manage the reactive oxygen species. That's when they run around. I kind of picture them as little bumper cars, like everything they're bumping into, they're rusting and causing oxidative stress and damage. When that is going on, we believe this ESS60 molecule actually will hold on to those extra reactive oxygen species
Mm.
until the glutathione and melatonin can be replenished and then manage them appropriate. So here's the fun analogy. It's the end of Mardi Gras. We're on Bourbon Street. You've got these drunk reactive oxygen species running around, smashing windows, smashing up cars. And the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and melatonin, come on to Bourbon Street, handcuff themselves to these drunk reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they're overwhelmed? They take those drunk reactive oxygen species and they stick them in the paddy wagon so that they can't do any damage. So they attach them to the exterior of this ESS60 molecule so they can't do any damage until the New Orleans Police Department can replenish the glutathione and the melatonin, handcuff themselves to these reactive oxygen species, and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say that the ESS60 molecule is the boss.
Well, if any of our listeners have been to Mardi Gras, we're probably going to have a lot of them requesting your molecule now at this point. It's a good analogy.
I have to be very delicate here, right? So this is interesting. If I were to speak, so this is a fun quiz. If I were to speak about hangovers, and the FDA is involved in all sorts of things, your first response is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, why would the FDA have anything to do with hangovers, right? This is something dumb that you do to yourself, right?
Sure.
I'm going to say 2 words, and then you're going to go, oh, that's why the FDA is involved. And the 2 words are alcohol poisoning. So a hangover is alcohol poisoning. Anything that is poisoning is falls under the purview of the FDA, and so we have to be careful about that. I can tell you that it does a really good job if you were to over imbibe, and I can't say what it's doing. I can't describe it. But I do enjoy drinking, and if I'm going to go out on a late night, I'm taking extra with me because the results are pretty phenomenal.
I love it. Wow. Well, we usually advocate for NAC for that because I know it also helps speed up the oxidative, the processing of alcohol in the liver. We do tell our patients. I know that's where that one got really popular as well. So
let me because you just mentioned liver, right? And this is, I think, all kind of intertwined.
Yeah.
In that original study, actually, my director of research said that initial study could have been 5 separate papers. One of the aspects of because it was just so involved, right?
Yeah.
One of the aspects of that particular paper is they injected the 3 groups of rats, and these are different sets because the longevity, separate from the longevity piece, with carbon tetrachloride. Carbon tetrachloride is an oxidative agent, so it does a lot of oxidative damage in the liver.
Okay.
The only rats that were recovering from that oxidative liver damage were the ESS60 and olive oil rats.
Wow. Okay. So ESS60. I'm gonna step way back from all this because you told us some fascinating research and thank you for the, hypothesizing on some of how this works. First question is, when are we going to see a study on humans?
I believe at this point, I wouldn't have really had an answer for you before A4M, right? Because you're clearly not doing a longevity study, right?
Yeah.
If the average human lives 90% longer, the average human lives to 152. When I say 152, if you're like me, your brain goes, oh, that's the oldest human. And the answer to that is no. There's a bell curve around 152, just like currently there's a bell curve right around 180 something. And so we're not doing, that's never going to happen. We actually did a really small ad hoc sleep study. It turned out I was, from one of the podcasts that I was on, I was put in contact with a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Smar, who is a consultant for Oura Ring. This was pre-pandemic. And we kind of launched down this path because it's one of our more consistent testimonials. We did this survey study. Only 10 people have gone through it so far. I actually was just talking to my team this week. We need to get more people through this. It was a crossover study where we collected 10 days of survey data. And the survey data was, how hard was it to fall asleep? How good did you sleep? How restless was your sleep? And how did you feel in the morning, right? Like how did you feel?
It was really focused on sleep and recovery feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we collected 10 days of that data prior to taking the product, 10 days on the product, 10 days back off the product, and then 10 days back on the product. 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were on the product, right? So
was that backed up by their Oura too? Or that you
we didn't have a chance because my contact with Benjamin Smar, it was right pre-pandemic, and it turns out the Oura Ring's pretty good at identifying COVID.
Yeah.
And so he disappeared. I actually have kind of lost touch with him. I need to kind of rekindle that relationship. So I would imagine, I can tell you this, I had one fascinating, this is a fair conversation. So I had a fascinating conversation with Benjamin Smart once. It was like, hey, you probably have sleep data as it relates to alcohol. He's like, oh yeah, I can send
Yeah.
you data. Like
Yeah.
your resting heart rate takes much longer to drop when you've had 2+ drinks, right?
Mhm.
So normally your resting heart rate drops a little pretty early in the
In
sleep
the evening.
cycle,
Yeah.
right? Within an hour probably, and then it maintains pretty steady. But if you've had drinks, also if you've exercised a lot, your body's doing a lot of processing, so your heart rate doesn't go down for quite a period of time.
Yeah.
And I showed him one of my initial, and it was like, this was after like 4 drinks, and it was pretty flat, right? So I had some cool conversations looking at, in that case, it was heart rate. I think we could look at heart rate variability. I haven't gone down that path yet. To kind of fast forward, I think this CRP, right, C-reactive protein, that inflammatory marker,
Yeah.
it's a fairly inexpensive test. We
Yeah.
already ordered some, so I've already done my finger prick, got my result, and then we're going to start getting, the goal is to get 20 people who have not tried the product, right? And if you've got anybody you'd be interested in kind of running through this, just get HSCRP data first, get them the product, at about 45 days, do another HSCRP when we've got some confirmation, right? Because you got to be wise about how you're investing in research. When we've got some confirmation and confidence that that's going to work well,
Yeah.
we can do a 30-person peer-reviewed published research project. It's expensive, but it's manageable,
It
and that very well may be, one of the first human trials that ever happens.
Yeah, it's manageable and it's also necessary. I mean, you know
Yeah.
this as a scientist, like to really, yeah, we love rodent data because it seems to oftentimes align fairly well with theories about what it's going to do for us. I guess we probably love simian data. We love, the apes because they're even closer. But yeah, I think that I would love to see that with your product. The second question, just about the product naming in general. Explain to our listeners why it's MyVitalC, but it's this ESS60. Tell us where that. What?
Yeah, so the C is carbon,
Yeah, I
and
think that's what when I first looked, I was like, vitamin C. What? It just looks too much like that. And I'm like, oh no. Then I read about the molecule. Like, that's what the C stands for. So yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
And so it was done, somewhat intentionally, right? Like, because one of the things that we wanted to be clear, if somebody ever saw the brand, I don't think you have
Yeah,
any doubt that MyVitalC is health, right? Is health focused. And so I was and am comfortable with maybe some misgivings like, hey, is that because we get that question from time to time? Frankly, it's in like the 1% of questions that we ever get, probably lower than that. Is that vitamin C, or somebody might see one of my videos that's out there and like, that's way too expensive for vitamin C. Well, it's not vitamin C, and I'm okay with that, because the focus was, hey, this is something that is, great for wellness and that you might want to consider.
yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. Just to clear that up, because then earlier in the conversation we were talking about comparing it to vitamin C as an antioxidant. So I just want to be clear there. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, man, let's get to know you just a bit better. Tell me, as someone who's really jumped into this field hardcore since, what'd you say, 2018,
Yep.
2017? Yeah, yeah. What do you do? What are, obviously you're passionate about this molecule and its ability to extend health and lifespan. What are the other hacks? What are the other things that you do in your own life? How do you live this out?
Well, I think I have decent opinions. What I'll share, because I think this is really interesting, is I did do a longevity summit, and I interviewed
Yeah.
55
Yeah,
experts in
that's why
longevity.
I'm asking. I wanna hear
Yeah,
what you learned and
yeah.
kinda then
And
what
so
you've
what do
incorporated.
I lean on, right?
Yeah.
And this one, it doesn't. I'll answer your question, but this one I think is very valuable. Which I asked every one of the experts, what are 2 to 3 habits, mindsets, protocols that you would share for longevity and a long health span?
Yeah.
And then we kind of collated that data. 33.3% mentioned sleep, 52% mentioned exercise, 52 mentioned diet, and then 46 mentioned mindset. And my first reaction to this, right? We already talked about like how important is sleep.
Yeah.
You should be reading a terrifying book to force you into sleep, right? Like that should be happening. And my first thought was maybe they got it wrong because it's only 33.3 that mentioned sleep and 46 mentioned mindset. And then I started, sometimes you just need to, and you need to mull it over and really think about it. And I realized, most of the people that are coming to you, that are listening to this podcast, kind of consuming my content, are people who are trying to make change.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the right mindset to put, like in case of sleep, to put your device down earlier, to not grab your device the first thing, to go to bed at the same time, to wake up. If you don't have the mindset to make those changes, you're not going to make those changes. If you don't have the mindset to get some exercise or increase the amount of exercising that you're doing, if you're not doing enough, if you don't have that mindset, you're not going to make that change. And same with diet, right? If you've got to cut out chips or whatever the device is in terms of nutrition, and you don't have the right mindset. So I actually do think they did get it wrong. I think mindset's the most important thing.
Oh,
And
wow.
you
Okay.
really do need to work on your
Yeah.
mindset. And I'm good. I'm in this unique position where I get to interview people. I'm gonna have you on my podcast, so I get to interview you to get like, what are you doing? And so like,
Yeah.
how does that
That's
fit in? And
yeah.
why would I do that? So I think that's really useful. Now, in terms of what I'm doing, I'll just share what I do with our product. So our product is this ESS60 molecule in 3 different oils. It's in olive oil, it's in MCT oil, and it's in avocado oil. And I typically do kind of a bulletproof coffee thing. Bulletproof coffee is typically a good quality coffee, some MCT oil, and then some purified butter, ghee. I get rid of the butter. I don't want that many calories. And so I'm just using our product, about a teaspoon and a half of our product in my coffee. Well, that's blending, right? Because it's oil and water. It's got to
Yep.
mix.
Yeah.
I take about a teaspoon and a half of our olive oil product. Things that are I train between 5 and 6 days a week. I do body weight and dumbbell and body weight training two of those days. I really believe everybody needs to be lifting heavy things. I think you should be
100%.
sore once, probably twice a week with what you're doing. The other 3 days, these are kind of guarantees built into my weekdays. I'm doing either sprints. I absolutely love sprints. If anybody's out there and hasn't sprinted in a while, there is
Well,
something so youthful about sprinting. It feels amazing. And
learned this from an exercise expert that I visited with at a longevity conference. And this, I wasn't surprised. Well, I was surprised by this number, but the statistics show that 90% of people never sprint in their life after the age of 30 again.
I believe it. Yeah,
I
right? Like,
mean,
because why? You're on a treadmill. Like, if you're active, you're, like, on a treadmill, or you're
slow,
not sprinting when you're
steady.
training for a marathon, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, switching that up, some consistent movement and sprinting, some like zone 2. Is that what you were referencing? You do some zone 2 training too?
So, yeah, I've had an interesting journey with Zone 2s. I played semi-professional soccer, and by the way, the difference between semi-professional and professional is night and day. Like, it's just asymptotically crazy. I've been on the pitch with
Okay.
professional players, and I'm like, I don't belong
I
here.
don't belong here.
That guy belongs here. I don't belong here, right? I
That's
held
where
my own
the
because
term out of your league is for real
it's
there. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know what league I ended up in.
Yeah.
Um, so I've always trained like my standard, and this I think is a good lesson. My standard jog was just 3 miles. If I was going to go for a jog, I'm going to jog 3 miles and nothing less. And in the middle of the pandemic, and that what that caused me to do is to jog once or twice a week, right? Middle pandemic, my wife is going out and she's doing 2 miles, right? It's like
Yeah.
22 minutes, something like that. And I was like, well, I could do that. Like, and what turned out is by reducing from 3 to 2 miles, I increased how often I run. And
Sure.
one of the things that I would advocate for somebody who's just getting started, there's a lot of people who just aren't even walking. Go walk. Choose the minimum target that has 0 resistance, if that's possible, right? And if that's 5 minutes of walking a day, and the thought of walking 10 minutes a day stops you, don't think about 10 minutes. Think about 5 minutes, right? And for more advanced people, like, don't put yourself at a place where you're going to limit the fact that you're going to do the work, right? There's another concept. I heard this in a video. The guy said, listen, my ideal workout is like 2 hours, and I'm hitting heavy weights and I'm doing cardio and I've got my 25 minutes of gratitude, but my minimum is like 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, so that I can have a positive check every single day. So I really like that kind of, you only focus on the minimum that's going to make you do it.
Yeah.
And think about it, 5 minutes a day is 35 minutes a week. understand that 5 minutes a day is better than 35 minutes one day,
That's true. That's very
right?
true. Yeah.
It,
So again, this you're kind of referencing going back to that thing that you learned from these longevity experts because that's very much in the line of mindset, right?
yeah.
But yeah,
Exactly. How do you manipulate our own often damaging subconscious mindset and just I kind of equate it to Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you've ever kind
yeah,
of watched Dave Ramsey, and
yeah.
his approach to credit cards is not is not fiscally accurate, but it's human nature accurate, right? Pay off
Um,
the first card, even if it's the lower interest rate. Pay off the first card that's the smallest amount so that you can have that success of getting that card out of the way, and then you can move on to the next one. And that's not what you should do fiscally, but it is what you should do to address human nature. And that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking in that regard.
yeah. I love it. I love it, man. Well, we talked before we got started here. I think I could probably talk to you for another hour since we're just getting into some of these other longevity hacks, and I know we both have a hard cutoff. So, unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap things up. Give us one more opinion on where you think this field of longevity research is headed. I mean, obviously, this is something you're very passionate about, this ESS60, but just bigger thoughts. You mentioned how we're talking about now inflammation is like the risk factor, and we use that term too, inflammaging, of all these chronic diseases that are killing us. I recently heard a Peter Attia podcast talking about the lack of funding for actually studying these anti-aging molecules, and like there's literally less than 0.5% of the NIH budget goes towards that, and like 0.5%. Yeah, maybe along those lines, like what do you think what's it going to take for us to accept as a culture that this is a basis of all of our chronic disease?
Well, that's a lot. And we could
No.
probably talk about an hour.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you,
Yeah.
Dr. Jeff, for giving me something
Mhm.
easy to wrap us up here.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe just one thing that okay, we make it simpler. What are you excited about? What do you think has got
So,
potential?
so I think the thing that I'd like to focus on, which you mentioned, and it doesn't surprise me. I think Peter T is talking about it. The first person I heard talk about it was David Sinclair,
Yeah.
a Harvard researcher, right, where
Yep.
he's advocating to think about aging as a disease, because currently we invest in the diseases of aging, but a lot of people think, oh, if we could cure cancer, then we're going to live a lot longer. And the reality is, if we cure cancer, the average human lives about 5 or 8 years longer. That's not that much, because the next disease of aging comes in and
Comes
takes you
in.
out.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and if now we've got all these research dollars split across all these different diseases of aging, if we could just address aging, you would in fact address all of these diseases of aging at once. And so that is something that I can present as well in the book Live Longer and Better. I think we are going to have amazing changes in health and longevity in the years to come. All right. And when you think about, how long might we be able to live, I would give that answer in twofold. My target is 125, but I think I'm hopeful that I'm going to live a lot longer because the medical community is going to provide a lot of information. There's this talk of reaching the escape velocity of
Velocity. Yep.
right? Escape
Yeah.
velocity of aging, where medical community extends life by more than a day every day that passes, right? And I'll just offer this as kind of evidence that this is going to happen. In 1950, medical information doubled every 50 years, every 50 years. Today, it's doubling every 3 months. So what that means is at the end of this year, we're going to have 16 times more medical information. And we know some of it's good, some of it's bad, but we're going to have 16 times more medical information than we had than we had at the beginning of this year, right? Not back in compared to 1950. So that information is happening faster. And that also doesn't include AI. And I think the value that AI is going to bring is not just writing papers faster, right? So we can get things written faster and published, but to help us process massive amounts of data so we do the right studies, right? So that
Mm.
the right tests are done, so that we stop wasting our time on some of these things that are. And I couldn't be more excited about that. I hope to be alive when we reach the escape velocity of aging.
Me too. Me too, brother. Well, listen, tell us where people can find you. It's going to be in our podcast notes too, but just say it a couple times out in the social media world, website, etc. Tell us where we can catch up with you.
Yeah, well, I made a URL specifically for your audience, myvitalc.com/wild health.
Okay.
And that's MyVitalC as in carbon. When they go there, again, we have 3 oils. I recommend olive oil for 2 main reasons. We're a research organization. All the research is in olive oil. Also, it's got the highest concentration of the ESS60 molecule in olive oil. Go for that. We offer 25. There'll also be a coupon code for your audience only on that link. So use that link to get a $15 off your initial order. We also offer a 25% discount if you go on subscription. Even if you just want to try 1 bottle, go on subscription, try that 1 bottle. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription.
Yeah.
Just take advantage of that discount. The book, Live Longer and Better, is available on Amazon. It's also available on our website with a charity piece that I really love, which is you can pay an extra $10. The book is $20 Amazon or on our website. You can pay an extra $10. I'll sign that book, and 100% of that $10 fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember the movie The Sound of Freedom, which addressed childhood sex trafficking. Horrible situation. Obviously, we need to fix it. Operation Underground Railroad is what the movie is about. That guy and his organization.
That's beautiful, man.
100% of the signature fee goes to that. And then, if you could follow me, I do have a podcast. It's called Live Beyond the Norms. You'll be on my podcast. And on Instagram, you can follow us. I'm constantly putting out good content on longevity things that I'm learning. I'm actually interviewing Udo later today. He's an oil expert, omega-3, omega-6 oil expert. So we pull out clips from that. Great information for health and longevity interested people. And that's at my handle's MyVitalC.
MyVitalC on Instagram. All right. Great, man. Well, Chris, I really enjoyed our talk today. This kind of snuck up on me. I just came back from a longevity conference trip, actually, and was just kind of, running around with my hair on fire. I was like, oh, I get to do a podcast today that I've been looking forward to, because I saw you as one of our potential guests, and I was really excited to get you on. So thanks for joining us today. Yeah. And I look forward, man. I look forward to reciprocating on your podcast. Give me a shout. Well, I'll email you right after this. We'll set that up.
We'll be in contact.
All right, man. Guys, thanks for joining us again for another wonderful episode. Chris Burres joining us from MyVitalC today, talking about the molecule ESS60. Go check him out, learn more about it, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you want more daily health education, be sure to follow us on Instagram, which is filled with health optimization how-tos, grocery shopping lists, guided breathwork posts, myth debunking, and so much more. You can find us at Wild Health MD on Instagram.